The world holds its breath. Is a new round of political confrontation inevitable? After the U.S. elections in late 2024, the seemingly unshakable relationship between the United States and Germany has cracked, exposing hidden contradictions and mutual dissatisfaction. Since November 2024, a series of statements from across the ocean, originating from Donald Trump, have sparked criticism and triggered growing tensions with German officials. During the election debates, an assertion was made about the failure of Germany's energy policy, allegedly returning to the construction of traditional power plants. An immediate reaction followed from the German Foreign Ministry, refuting this information and emphasizing that more than half of the country's energy is produced from renewable sources, while coal and nuclear power plants are being decommissioned. The response was published on the social network X, formerly Twitter, in the form of a mocking comment. No less acute was the issue of trade imbalances, especially in the automotive industry. According to Trump, Germany exports Mercedes-Benz and Volkswagen cars to the United States, while imports of American Chevrolet or Cadillac remain insignificant. This was described as unfair, and a conversation with Angela Merkel was cited as an example in which this topic had already been raised. In turn, the German leadership openly condemns U.S. interference in its democratic processes and calls on Europe to immediately strengthen its independence. On the horizon of international relations, an hour of change has dawned, caused not only by the return to isolationist tendencies and assertive trade policies under Donald Trump, but also by actions perceived by the German political establishment as a direct encroachment on the country's sovereignty. In early 2025, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, speaking to the public, expressed sharp condemnation of high-ranking American officials whose actions, he said, crossed the line, grossly interfering in the German electoral process. Merz emphasized that after Donald Trump's recent statements, it has become obvious that the fate of Europe is deeply indifferent to a certain part of the American government. One of the most controversial episodes was the political involvement of tech magnate Elon Musk, whose statements and online activity were perceived as open support for right-wing political forces in Germany. Such actions by Musk caused a wave of indignation among German officials, who regarded them as an irresponsible attempt to influence public opinion during a critical election period. What Mr. Elon Musk has allowed himself to do recently is an unprecedented interference in the German elections, Merz said, comparing it to foreign interference, the scale of which Europe had previously only observed from Moscow. Tensions between Germany and the U.S. reached a critical point after the U.S. Vice President's visit to Munich. His appearance at a rally shortly before the elections was seen by many as open support for opposition forces seeking to undermine the position of the ruling coalition. This step caused a wave of outrage in German political circles, the media, and among voters, who saw it as a provocative attempt to influence the outcome of the elections in favor of pro-American parties. In response, Berlin's rhetoric has become noticeably tougher. German Economy Minister Robert Habeck, sharing the Chancellor's concerns, stated that under Trump, the United States has ceased to be a reliable partner. "We cannot rely on Trump. We cannot rely on Washington," he emphasized in his television address, calling on Europe to take its destiny into its own hands. This political conflict is unfolding against the backdrop of deepening economic contradictions. Trump is reintroducing tariffs on European steel, automobiles, and pharmaceutical products, and Germany, in response, threatens to withdraw its gold reserves from the U.S. Federal Reserve System. The trust that once served as the foundation of American-German relations has been undermined. And although both countries are still bound by obligations within NATO, even this military-political alliance is being called into question. Chancellor Merz, addressing the leaders of the European Union, emphasized the urgency of the moment, stating that the absolute priority is the unity and solidarity of European states. In Europe, there is a growing awareness of the need to distance itself from the influence of the United States. Calls for real independence are finding increasing resonance in EU countries, striving to create their own independent defense systems and trade agreements, which will reduce dependence on Washington. In Berlin and Brussels, a consensus is forming. A potential second term for Donald Trump as President of the United States would not only be a diplomatic challenge, but also a catalyst for fundamental changes in the relationship between Europe and America. While maintaining ties with its transatlantic partner, Germany is demonstrating its unwillingness to tolerate interference in its affairs, whether economic, political, or otherwise. This signal marks the beginning of a new era in transatlantic relations, where close partnership is giving way to cautious distance and a pursuit of strategic autonomy. The confrontation has reached a peak. German Economy Minister Robert Habeck, in a statement, sharply criticized Donald Trump's tariff policies, calling them economically unsustainable and undermining international relations. Speaking at a council meeting, Habeck warned against falling into a trap set by the American side, emphasizing that Trump's trade rhetoric, in his view, is based on false claims. An influential economist from HBC openly questioned the American side's arguments for imposing tariffs, which are based on the belief in the negative impact of globalization and the existence of a trade deficit. According to him, globalization benefits all participants, and it is impossible to draw hasty conclusions about the United States losing in trade based solely on a trade deficit with countries such as Germany or Europe. He emphasized that the U.S. economy has grown significantly faster than the German economy over the past 2 decades, which refutes claims that America is losing in global trade. The arguments underlying the tariff decision do not correspond to reality. The economist also expressed the opinion that entering into such a dispute makes no sense. The Trump administration's approach has been criticized as being based not on economic reciprocity, but on unilateral protectionism. Claims of mutual tariffs were called incorrect, and the measures taken were described as preventive and isolationist, causing significant damage to both the American and global economies. Robert Habeck expressed serious concern about the looming threat, noting that the first signs of negative impact have already appeared in the stock markets. He emphasized that further escalation of the situation is fraught with much more serious consequences for the global economy. A key point of his speech was the call for European leaders to act strategically and collectively. Habeck emphasized that in the current environment, it is necessary to exercise caution, but at the same time demonstrate firmness and determination. He noted that Europe is in a strong position, while the United States is experiencing a period of relative weakness. At the same time, he warned European countries against trying to conclude separate agreements with Washington, emphasizing that unity is not only a political principle, but also a strategic necessity. According to Habeck, Europe's strength lies in its unity, and this strength must be strengthened by building a common trade policy with other countries. In this regard, he called on the European Union to expand global economic alliances, calling trade negotiations with South Korea, Japan, India, and Indonesia vital. He also supported the idea of joining the Trans-Pacific Free Trade Agreement. Habeck assured that Europe is well prepared enough to avoid escalating tariff wars, but emphasized that the goal is not confrontation. According to him, entering into a tariff war will damage the economy and the well-being of people. Habeck's statements indicate a noticeable change in Germany's tone and strategy. They signal a willingness not only to resist Donald Trump's aggressive trade policies, but also to lead Europe's movement toward greater independence and cohesion. His comments reflect a growing sense of urgency among U.S. allies who are increasingly doubtful that American leadership, especially under Trump, takes their interests into account. In a context where the United States, in the opinion of many, is losing its leadership position on the world stage, and Europe is demonstrating the potential for a united force, Germany is calling for a rethinking of the global trade architecture. Instead of passively responding to challenges, it is proposed to move toward actively shaping a collective strategy. In doing so, Berlin draws a clear line, declaring its rejection of tariff blackmail and its intention to maintain European unity in the face of external pressure. Against the backdrop of the Trump administration's isolationist policies, which alienate allies, Germany sees its role in the role of the European Union in protecting the principles of cooperation and a balanced world order. Trade ties between the United States and Germany have traditionally been a cornerstone of the transatlantic economic partnership. As two of the world's leading economies, they have provided millions of jobs, spurred economic growth, and strengthened diplomatic relations, including security cooperation. However, in recent years, particularly during the Trump administration, tensions have been mounting in these relations, fueled by tariff wars, tough rhetoric, and a reassessment of economic priorities. Germany is a key U.S. trading partner in the European Union, second only to the Netherlands, and ranks among the top 5 globally. In 2023, bilateral trade exceeded $250 billion, with German exports to the U.S. surpassing $150 billion, including automobiles, industrial equipment, medical technology, and pharmaceuticals. The United States, in turn, sends an export flow of goods to Germany estimated at approximately $100 billion. This volume is dominated by aircraft, chemical products, and agricultural goods. The interconnection between the two countries also extends to the service sector and investment flows. American companies established in Germany provide jobs for hundreds of thousands of people. German giants such as BMW, Siemens, and SAP, in turn, support large-scale operations in the United States. However, despite these strong economic ties, tensions between the countries increased noticeably during Donald Trump's presidency. Particular dissatisfaction was caused by the trade deficit and related tariffs. Trump repeatedly pointed out that the trade deficit with Germany reaches $50 billion a year, presenting this as evidence of unfair play. He accused Germany of exploiting the American market while benefiting from security guarantees provided by NATO. These statements, while resonating with Trump's supporters, ignore the complex structure of modern global trade and extensive supply chains. Before continuing, a brief remark is warranted. If you find this material interesting, please give it a thumbs up. Such activity helps to expand the audience, and your comments and feedback are even more valuable. Thank you for your attention, and let's return to the topic. So, in 2018, the Trump administration decided to impose tariffs on European steel and aluminum, citing national security concerns. This move immediately provoked a sharp response from the European Union, which imposed duties on a number of iconic American goods, such as motorcycles and whiskey. German officials, including then-Chancellor Angela Merkel and Minister of Economics Robert Habeck, reacted with increasing firmness. Habeck, in particular, criticized the Trump administration's trade policy, calling it fundamentally flawed and damaging to the economies of both countries. He emphasized that U.S. economic growth has significantly outpaced Germany's over the past 2 decades, which, in his opinion, calls into question the Trump administration's claims that the trade deficit alone can serve as justification for punitive measures. Germany, according to Habeck, will not allow itself to be intimidated by threats of tariffs. Instead, the country intends to strengthen ties with other global partners, especially in Asia and South America. It is important to note that this is not just about goods. Services and finance also play an important role in trade relations between the U.S. and Germany. American tech giants, financial companies, and consulting firms generate significant profits in the German market. At the same time, German expertise in engineering, logistics, and automotive continues to play a key role in the development of American infrastructure and manufacturing. Mutual investments demonstrate the deep interdependence of these two economies. Germany and the United States are linked by strong economic ties. The volume of direct German investment in the American economy exceeded $500 billion in 2023, while American investments in Germany amounted to more than $400 billion. This impressive foundation was built on mutual trust and many years of business partnership. However, recently, trust between the countries has been tested to some extent. Germany's decision to consider repatriating more than 1,200 tons of gold stored in the U.S. Federal Reserve, worth over $120 billion, was seen by many as a symbolic gesture, reflecting growing concerns about political instability and financial unpredictability in America. These events are unfolding against the backdrop of other U.S. allies also reassessing the degree of their economic dependence on Washington. There's a growing concern about a return to isolationist policies reminiscent of Donald Trump's era, despite the Biden administration's commitment to multilateralism, trade diplomacy, and cooperation on global issues like climate change and tech regulation. However, as Trump's political position strengthens, Germany and Europe as a whole are looking to hedge their bets. German leaders are increasingly discussing the need for economic self-reliance and stronger European unity. Germany is demonstrating a desire to reduce its dependence on U.S. influence and the American market. With the global economy becoming increasingly fragmented and multipolar, the prospects for trade relations between the two countries appear rather uncertain. Both countries could benefit from open markets, sensible regulations, and partnerships that foster innovation. However, if protectionist tendencies increase and political considerations begin to outweigh economic pragmatism, the relationship between them may continue to deteriorate. Germany, it seems, intends not to sever ties, but rather to chart a more independent course, emphasizing diversification, resilience, and the principle that no single ally should exert undue influence over Europe's economic future. Currently, relations between the U.S. and Germany are at a turning point. They are being influenced by trade tensions, changing dynamics within NATO, and strengthening ties within the European Union. The possible return of Donald Trump to the White House only exacerbates these tensions, forcing Germany and the EU to reassess their strategic and economic positions. Beyond trade disputes, Trump's demand for NATO members to increase defense spending to 5% of GDP has been met with resistance. In response, Germany, under Chancellor Friedrich Merz, has proposed allocating €1 trillion to European defense over the next decade. This is a clear signal of Europe's desire for greater military independence and reflects growing doubts about America's long-term commitment to the North Atlantic Alliance. Vice President J.D. Vance has found himself at the center of attention, with his speech at the Munich Security Conference sparking outrage. Many interpreted his words as showing sympathy for far-right movements in Europe, which triggered sharp criticism from EU leaders. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius did not hold back, calling Vance's remarks completely unacceptable. Incidents like these only fuel Europe's push towards strategic independence, both economically and militarily. Conflicts of interest and differing viewpoints are pushing European countries to seek their own path on the global stage. Thus, relations between the U.S. and Germany are being shaped by increasing protectionism, conflicting defense priorities, and rising political tensions. Despite the importance of long-standing alliances and shared interests, the current environment indicates that Germany and the European Union may be moving towards a more independent future. This process is redefining their relationship with the U.S. in the context of a changing global landscape, where old agreements no longer seem immutable.